What's going on, everybody? We have a new episode out today on the Elevated Lifestyle Lab podcast. I'm excited for this episode. We have an amazing guest on today. Her name is Jessica Mullen. She's an ultrarunner from Seattle, Washington. I met her at our 3 days at the fair race in New Jersey. It was a 6-day run I did about 2 months ago. She crushed the course record for females. She also set an age group record for 434 miles in 144 hours. She is a beast. She's also a registered dietitian nutritionist, so she has some great insight on how to fuel for these long distance races. I'm pretty silly. I forgot to hit the record button on the Zoom call, but I was able to. I messed up my first podcast when I did this on Zoom. I didn't record the whole thing, so I set up my phone to record as a backup. So if you're watching the video, you're going to notice around minute 18 it's going to flip, and you're going to notice both videos pop on, but at the first 18 minutes, you can just hear her audio, which sounds the same. So if you're listening to the audio version, you would never know the difference. And if you're listening to the video, you'll see both live videos around the 19-minute mark, guys. So hope you guys enjoy. There's a lot of nuggets in this one. I really had a lot of fun with this. Thanks, Jessica, for coming on. This episode is sponsored by us here at Elevated Lifestyle Lab. Go to our website at elevatedlifestylelab.com, enter coupon code FREEDOM on the checkout screen, receive 30% off the full month of July, guys. Go check it out. If your shopping cart gets over $100, we're going to cover shipping for you guys. Go check out our supplements, elevatedlifestylelab.com, enter coupon code FREEDOM for the month of July, get 30% off. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time to do this with me.
Sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Just so you guys know, I met Jess a couple months back at our 6-day race up in New Jersey. She is the new record holder for American age group for the most miles in 144 hours. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's it feel once you got home and healed up? How'd that feel?
You know, not too bad. Not too bad. It was better than I thought. Last time when I did my first 10-day, I was tired for a couple months.
Really?
Like a long time. And this one, I felt like it bounced back pretty fast.
Cool. How did the shin heal up?
You know, it's funny. I always call it the shin, but to be really technical, it's the tendon from my extensors, from my toes, that attaches right at the front of your shin by kind of where the tongue of your shoe is, right above there. Mm-hmm. So it's the extensors that's the issue.
Okay.
It healed up fine. It's something that I like to bugger up, so I'm trying to figure out how not to do that again.
Sure. Did it bother you you just did a 100-miler like a week or two ago? Did it flare up at all?
No.
Awesome.
It was fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was hot though.
I saw it was like a lot of people dropped out, like it was intense. That's how it's been here in Florida. It's been so hot lately. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's more my cup of tea than Jersey was. Jersey was so cold.
Now, is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Tennessee. So I grew up in Tennessee till I was like 18. I went to Arizona. I was in Phoenix for a couple years for school, and then I've been in Florida for like since like 2005. So I've been here for a while.
Yeah, I like Florida.
Yeah, it's cool. I really like it. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I'm in a sweatshirt.
Is it starting to get cold out where you are now?
Yeah, it's okay. It's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
It's like 60 degrees.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, thanks for coming on.
How was your knee? How was your recovery? How are you doing?
So far, so good. You know, I took like 2 weeks off after I got back from the trip, just kind of let it heal up. You know, it didn't feel like I ripped anything it just felt like something was out of alignment. Like, you know, we were there, like maybe my hip was out or something was kind of just off. So I've been training normal. Nothing's been flaring up. So I've got a 100-miler in like 2.5 weeks. So we'll see how it does.
Yeah. Well, you were really smart about it, because if you hadn't done what you've done, who knows?
I know.
You know?
Yeah, and it was so early in the race too. It's like it's like you always know the point, like, okay, if there's like 24 hours left, then maybe, okay, let's push it real hard. Right. But I had like 100 hours left. I'm like, I'm not gonna mess it up this early.
Yeah.
Well, Jess, let's get into a little bit. I do have a couple questions for you because
Okay.
your resume is incredible. You know, it's like I go to these races, and you've been doing ultras for a long time. I'm still
Yeah.
fairly new into it, but I love meeting people like yourself, and then going home and like Googling you, and then seeing like all these races on your website. It's like, holy shit! Like you got like, you know, you've done over 60 100 milers at this point, right?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's crazy. Then, were you a runner when you back in college, or did you kind of pick it up? No.
Yeah, no, so when I was a kid, I always played sports.
Yeah.
Loved playing sports. I thought running was stupid. Like, why would you just run? And then in college, it was because I kind of got out of shape because I never thought about exercise growing up. We just did it. And I wasn't good enough to play sports in college. And so I just started jogging with girlfriends as like a way to be active. And that's how the running started for me.
Nice. Yeah, I was the same way. I don't think I ever ran more than like 2 or 3 miles until just a few years ago. Like, it's crazy
Yeah.
how it just switches over.
Yeah.
When did you get introduced into ultras? When did you hear about that?
So ultras, I was introduced to that in 2007.
Okay.
And I had never heard of them. You know, before that, my friend, her boyfriend ran ultras. And so I was like, what? And then, like, why would you ever want to run longer than a marathon? You know what I mean? But I liked hiking. I never even really like thought about trail running even. It was just like,
Sure.
you hike when you ran on the road. And so I tried a 50K, and that was at the beginning of 2007. And it was funny because it was a fat ass, you know, which there weren't
Yep.
even, I don't even know if there are many of them now, but it's where there's no fees or no nothing. It's right after the holidays, and it's meant to burn off your fat ass.
Ah, okay.
And so the course was marked with like Christmas decorations, and it was on this mountain called Tiger Mountain where there's a ton of trails. And most people do one loop, which is 25K, and I wanted to do 50K. So there's like, you know, 5 people out on the second loop. So I'm seeing nobody because, you know, 25K is decently long. I got so long. I ran for hours and hours and hours, and it was a very long day. But
Oh, no.
I loved it. It was fun. Yeah. And so that got me started.
As you were doing that, were you thinking to yourself like, I'm not going to do this again? Or was it, you know, thinking back to my first ultra, I did a timed event. I did a 10-hour, and there was something that kind of clicked in me when I passed like a marathon distance, almost like, you know, I'm sure you've gone through it when you're running. You almost go have like a, you know, where you get emotional in a most positive way, right? Like you're proud of yourself. You can't believe you're doing this. Did that happen on your first time, or did that? No.
No, not that component of it, which God, I love that. And that's what I love about the 6 days is, but I like to keep it interesting, and not that I've done that many marathons. I've done maybe like 6 or 7 marathons, but it was like, oh, this isn't actually that much further, and it's fun and it's interesting. It'll keep, you know, like marathons I could see getting boring, but I was not interested in anything really long at that point because people were talking to me about longer ultras, and I was like, no way. And so, they were a smaller group back then. There's a running group called the Marathon Maniacs, which I think has gotten like really big now. And it was mainly a lot of Pacific Northwest people back then. And they do volume. And so that's how, because then somebody was like, well, there's another 50K like in 2 or 3 weeks or something. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay. And so I went, and that was fun. And somebody told me there was a marathon the next weekend. So I went to that, and it just kind of went from there. And that was great because that's when I first, that's when I kind of like stopped listening to general recommendations and information out there on like how frequently you should run races and all of that kind of stuff, and was like, you know, maybe I could just explore what works for me, you know.
Sure.
Because more is always better.
Yeah, that's why I go big or go home, you know. That's what you always say. So take me back as far as your career wise, because I always find it interesting when I meet like nutritionists that are also athletes, right? Because especially with, which I know you're aware of, with just all the different new studies that come out on keto and, you know, high fat and low, and just, and then did you do that back when you first started running, or did you become a nutritionist later on in your running career?
Yeah, so yes, I was already I mean, because I've jogged since college.
Okay.
But like marathons, ultras, that was after I was already a dietitian. So when I got out of college, I was first an auditor for a public accounting firm, planning to go the CPA route.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for 2 years, and I really did not like it. Like the corporate world
I hear you.
was not for me.
Yep.
And so, but it's funny because I knew I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was right about the time that I got sober also, of just kind of like re-looking at life, what was important to me, all of that kind of stuff. So, and I remember it was funny, I was talking with a coworker because I didn't leave my job right away. I knew I wanted to quit, but I wanted to wait until I knew what I wanted to do to quit. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, why don't you study nutrition? Like, you are obsessed with food and health. And I was like, oh my God. So I didn't even have the original idea. So then it was like in 2000 or 2001, I left my job and went and did like classes to get into a graduate program, did my master's in nutrition, got that done in like 2005 or something, and then did an internship so that I could become a registered dietitian. And I've been doing that ever since. And I started out in hospitals doing inpatient care because I didn't understand disease processes really at all because I'd always been healthy. And so I wanted to learn kind of more about disease and health, because you read it in a book about like kidney disease or this or that, and it's kind of like, I kind of get it.
Sure.
So that really helped me just understand, diagnoses, procedures, health, non-health, all that kind of stuff. But it was mainly tube feedings and TPN, which is IV feedings, calculations, which I love math, but there's not much patient interaction other than like a doctor saying this person is morbidly obese, they'll counsel them on weight loss when like they're not asking for it, which is a real fun opener. Like the doctor wanted me to come talk to you, and they're either like doped up because they're on meds, or they don't care, or they're just anyway. So that was good for a little while, and then I went into private practice in 2010, and I've been doing that ever since. And I also coached at a CrossFit, got my personal training certificate, and was a CrossFit coach back in the day, like before CrossFit took off back in like 2009, 2010, and I stopped doing that in like 2013 or 14, and then did some personal training, and then I do running coaching now, and I also program strength workouts.
Nice. Well, I'm sure working in the hospital for that stint for doing the nutrition, that probably helped open your eyes to like because I'm sure like when you're dealing with the general public, like it might just be more of a general program of how to eat and maybe how to lose weight, but it probably helped you to see like the far side of like how people react to, if they have diabetes or high blood pressure, and how you can balance that with nutrition. Because I feel like a lot of people these days are just above that line of like going to the hospital. I feel like so many people are like so sick, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. But I'm sure I'm sure that gave you some experience later with your clients to be able to be like, this might be a little awry. Like you're not totally downfall with it, but this, it probably helped you out, right? Yeah,
and in that vein, like the way that I work with clients and my philosophy for nutrition counseling is so much more about your mind and your habits and that kind of stuff. Because if it was as simple as, here's how many calories you should have, here's like, the food you should eat, we'd all have it figured out.
Sure.
Like we all kind of know, for the most part, like vegetables are good for you. Maybe not eat too many donuts or Twinkies, probably, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It's not rocket science, but, and it even goes back to my auditing days, because when I was auditing, you would show up as the auditor to like, I'm going to look at your work, and I'm looking for what's wrong with it, or I'm going to ask you why and how you do it. You know what I mean? Because auditors, nobody likes. And so that was my first introduction as a professional of like learning how to talk to people and making them feel comfortable and focusing on how I'm affecting them, and how to really communicate with people And I feel like that's so much of how I talk with people in my nutrition practice, somewhat with running, but more with nutrition, because people have such strong feelings around their relationship with food and their relationship with their body. And a lot of it is shame, frustration, confusion, and feeling embarrassed that they don't know how to do, like, because there's so much information out there.
Oh yeah.
And because right now the really hip thing is plant-based. Even just that phrase, I think makes people feel better to say, like, I'm plant-based.
I know everything has plant-based on it now. Shampoo, diapers, like, just buy me a plant-based. It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yes. So, and also teaches me patience, and open-mindedness, because I try to think of, if people are really set on a fad, which I want to be like, that is just like, okay, I can learn from my clients too, but so much of it is, and I learned this in the hospital, it doesn't matter if you're healthy or not, we all have what's going on between our ears that's blocking us from feeling good about ourselves, from reaching our potential, because to me, that is the biggest factor of affecting performance, relationships, health. Everything is kind of how we talk to ourselves, how we deal with what we're exposed to, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's so clutch. The mental side of that is such a huge play. And I think I was listening to something on your website, I believe one of your videos, and I love your approach to how you talk with your clients about the food, because a lot of nutritionists, or a lot of people that'll try to give you some type of meal plan will really, give you a strict diet. You can't eat this, you can't do that. And I like how you talked about it in one of the videos I watched, how you kind of just talk to the person, get a starting base, see what their relationship is to food, and work with what they know and what they already currently eat, right? So it's not like no more sugar, no more nothing. It's like, well, maybe let's like limit it to like this amount. And it's like, instead of binge eating, let's like try to cut it at this time. And I think it's, like you said, that's like one of the most important parts, is really the mental side, right? It's like, I'm sure you work a lot with that.
Do what's gonna work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes people are like, oh, I could totally do more than that. And I'm like, well, let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Because like, then you do it, versus like thinking you're going to do it, and then it's too much and you get too overwhelmed. And I love ranges. Like, I love, especially with alcohol, because alcohol is always a fun conversation with people. It's like, the goal would be like, let's say X number of nights or X amount of drinks per week. That would be the awesome goal. And then like the hard line is a larger amount. Say like the goal would be, 2 drinks if you're a rock star a week. And the hard stop is like 4 as tops, or whatever, wherever they want to be, because then that gives you flexibility for life.
Sure.
Like if you have a really crappy day and you're like, I don't care, you can still be on plan.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because so much of it is like, what is you manning up? And I know some people don't like that phrase, but what is you like giving 2% better than you normally would in this situation? Not Alex on his perfect day if he had like a personal chef, a personal trainer, a house cleaner, a babysitter, and $2 million of like excess cash.
Hey yo.
I have higher expectations of what you're capable of. And it's like, your kid was throwing up last night, your alarm didn't go off this morning, like your knee hurts and you have a headache. Like, what I would expect of you on that day, or what you should expect of yourself, is different.
Sure.
Yeah,
because some people, when they go off the rails, they just feel like they've been completely defeated, and it's like they just completely just give it up.
Yeah, and I like to challenge people, because I say, to me, that's kind of like the child version.
Yeah.
Like, be an adult.
Yeah.
Because black and white is being really like unthoughtful. It's like, I'm either totally on plan and I'm not thinking about it, or F it, I'm off plan. And it's like, no, be an adult, live in between.
Yeah.
Like, feel your consequences and keep going. That's life, and it's okay, and you'll be more proud of yourself if you do that.
Sure. Do you feel like going through, because you've been sober a long time now, do you feel like going through the program and practicing sobriety for 20 plus years now, right? It's been a while.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that translates a lot into your clients, where can you pick up on these maybe addiction qualities related to food, or like these people just spiraling out of control? You feel like that carries over and helps you like spot it?
Yeah, and it really like kind of like yes, and it's really probing. Like I just find the best way to for me to mainly work with people is like, so how's that working for you? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so what and trying to help people get really honest with themselves. Because one of the biggest things that I hear, which we all do, is in the moment we say, I don't care, it's not that big of a deal. But obviously you do.
Recording in progress.
Oop, hang on.
Because
Oop, hang on. So there we go. It's okay.
because if you didn't really care, you wouldn't be reaching out to me right now. And so asking people, digging deeper and just kind of like probing, I find, because the idea is really to help them figure it out.
Yeah.
Because then then it makes more sense to them, just like, and that's what my experience has been in sobriety and just trying to grow as a human being, is continuing to grow and explore. And that's so like in a forgivable way, because I'm still an idiot, you know what I mean? Or just like, I'm still human.
Still learning, yeah.
Yeah. And it's the difference between my mind and my heart. Like if I can get down to my heart, usually I know what's good for me, but it's my mind.
That's crazy. Yeah,
that's the tough part.
Oh
And
yeah.
my body's like the good guy who's always trying to help out, you know? I feel like my poor body's always working as hard as it can, and it's my mind that's the mess up.
Yeah, you just try to quiet the mind. Just be quiet.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you deal with I was looking on, I think it was the same video that you have on your website that was that you're certified to be able to, when you're on the treadmill in the facility that you're at with the face mask on. And it's funny because I've never known what I've always thought that was oxygen when people are running. So I just assumed it was oxygen, but it's like a metabolic reader,
metabolic cart. Yeah. Like they use in the hospital. So like on burn patients or really severe patients, they'll use metabolic carts to be able to understand how many calories somebody needs for healing. And that's where it started. I think somebody just got an idea of let's do that while somebody's exercising, because it'll tell you their calorie burn, but also the respiratory quotient, which is how much are you oxidizing fatty acids and how much are you oxidizing glucose, what's your source of energy as a percentage. So you can see as people are walking, like, are they burning primarily fat, which they should be? And then if they turn it into a jog, so you do steps of increasing the treadmill speed for 5-minute intervals and see how the heart rate changes and how the utilization of energy changes and where that crossover is, which should be like at your aerobic threshold. And then when it really goes all the way up, and it's fascinating.
No, it's really cool. Have you got on it and like dialed in yourself? Like, you know exactly where you're, you have?
Yeah, and it's fun because it's interesting. You want to see what I think works the best is if you see at lower intensities, a really strong like 70-30, 75-25% fat burn is the high burn. But then as you start to go anaerobic, that decreases and the sugar burn goes up as a percentage because you're more explosive burning sugar. I don't care what anybody says. You can't burn fat as explosively as you can sugar. And so people that are metabolically flexible, and I think well-trained, have a really consistent line for low heart rates. It doesn't change, and then it can quickly shift to sugar burn. A less, I think, effective angle would be where you start with a high fat burn, but as soon as your heart rate starts to incrementally increase, you drop. So it's more of like at a 45-degree angle versus being flat and then switching quickly. And then there are people that are burning sugar no matter what the heart rate is really high, and that's really ineffective and inflammatory. And so mine, I got pretty good, and then it was fun to see because the things that can, one of the biggest things I think in the short term that can affect it and potentially long term is stress. So I came in like, I think it was within 36 hours of finishing a 100-mile race, which was awful, and got on the treadmill and did a test, and I had the same exact picture, just raise it by 10%, meaning I was burning 10% more sugar. Like the angle of the graph was the same,
Right.
But because I was more stressed, I was burning more sugar. And I saw that time and time again. To me, that was the more interesting part when I had clients were like, I had one guy who came in who had a wonderful profile and his nephew passed away like the day before. And it was totally way higher sugar burn.
Wow.
And other people, same thing, where they had something acutely stressful happen and it would really change. And so it was interesting to see how much stress can affect, to me, the inflammatory response, because again, glucose is a more inflammatory way to burn fuel. And it's just more that fight or flight response.
Sure.
You know, and so if you're training that way, and that's what your profile looks like normally, which is often due to training at too hard of a high heart rate all the time. So you're just like working too hard all the time, or your diet, if it's not well balanced and you have a high percentage of especially, you know, white starches and sugar, or maybe you're supplementing with too much gels and carbohydrate while running, it can throw that picture off because your hormones, what you utilize, is affected by what you do.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love it. It's I can totally, I don't have one of those machines, but when I do, like if I train hard for a few days and get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then go out and then that run, my heart rate's like pegged to like 190, right? And so obviously I'm just burning through all I feel at that point just because my body's so stressed. So it's probably the same concept, right? Same thing.
Yeah. And that's why, like, not necessarily in a multi-day, because that's a different ball of wax, but let's say like 100-miler, I really recommend to people because for one, it matches their effort at the beginning. Hopefully they're not working too hard in the first like 50 miles of a 100-miler, or else you might not make it to the finish line. But your intensity is lower. You should be able to digest more complex food. And if you're well trained, endurance really serves well to be a good fat burner in general, because it's lower heart rate, that you can digest more food because you're not working so hard and your heart rate's not so high. And then later, even if you are a good fat burner, by the end of 100, the stress has accumulated. And a lot of times people are burning through calories and feel horrible towards the end. And that's when I recommend doing more of the gels and stuff, because you're burning such a higher percentage of glucose at the end of 100, even if you're moving slow, just because of the accumulation of the work that's been done, that to kind of save that stuff, not out of the gate because you'll be sick of it by the end, but more towards the end just because of what you've done to your body. So anyways, it's fascinating.
No, yeah, I was gonna get into that as far as for yours, like how you fuel during a race. Like if you're just gonna do just a 50-miler, do you feel up different than if you're gonna do like 100? Like as far as like the night before meal, maybe it's more heavy and fat rather than carb. Like do you switch it up depending on what length?
Yeah, so not too much the night before. So usually the night before I just kind of watch the fiber, but overall I tend to eat normal because we do such long stuff, or if you're running longer stuff, I'd say longer than a marathon, let's say, it's more about what you do during the race. I'm more of a believer of try to eat normal because that's what your stomach is used to. And that'll serve you, because sometimes if people like, you know, which people don't do as often anymore, but do a huge like carbo load, you're just going to feel bloated and full and puffy. And yes, you might retain some water, but does that is that a bigger benefit than feeling like you have this big rock in your stomach, which sometimes people feel because nervousness, anxiety, even if you think you don't have it, slows down digestion. So I'm kind of like almost eat a smaller dinner, pretty normal, but keep it somewhat simple. Don't have too much fiber. And then if you need a snack before bed, do that. But I'd rather people almost slightly undereat just because of the whole slow digestion, nerves, anxiety. And then you're going to have breakfast the next morning before you run or do what you're going to do if it's triathlon or whatever. And then during, I think it depends upon obviously the duration, but also your intent, you know, like how hard you're working. Because if you're racing a 50K versus just going out to have fun and maybe like complete the 50K or doing it with your friends, I would feel differently even for that. Because again, you want to match kind of the intensity level because your digestion is going to be different. And to me, it's kind of like more like if you're working hard, you can't really process much and you're just trying to get through it versus sustenance. If you're just kind of having a mellow day, your body, have it mimic as closely as you can to regular life, because that's what your stomach's used to. Or if it's the first half of something long, or if it's just something really long that you're doing the whole time, your heart rate's not so high, you could process more. So it kind of depends,
Sure.
on that kind of stuff, for a really convoluted answer.
Oh yeah. Well, I found it interesting when we were at doing the Jersey race. Yeah, I think we were talking about electrolytes or something, and you're like, I don't really mess around. A hot day, of course, you're not doubting that you don't need them, but you're just saying, like, if, you eat a cheeseburger, you probably got like the sodium you need. And it was really insightful for me because, like, I told you, like, I'm so burnt out on the sugary electrolyte mix. And it's like, it makes so much sense. It's like, I just ate 2 pieces of pizza, a cheeseburger, and a bag of chips. Do I really need like another like electrolyte bottle? Like, I think I'm good, right? Like,
right, I'm good for at least an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's where sometimes, having a conversation with a dietitian or something is good, or at least someone that knows sports to a degree, because I do believe a lot of people overdo the electrolytes, and guess what? That'll upset your stomach.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
People are like trying to figure out what food they should have, thinking that might be the problem. And I think a lot of times it's the electrolytes, and not that I don't think you need any, but also, like, even between products, the amount of electrolytes in there varies so widely. And sometimes people will be taking like salt pills, and I'll be like, do you know what you're taking and how much is in it? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then how do you know how much you're even taking?
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, and that's the challenge and the interesting part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've done so many hundreds. Do you have, like, obviously you do a lot of trail running, so the course will determine as far as like your game plan, but do you have, like, what's your like go-to plan? Like, do you have like, you're going to run for 4 hours, you take 15 off, right? Like, do you have like a set kind of pace, a walk run pace? I mean, I know the courses will vary, but do you try to sleep at all during these things, or you just balls to the walls?
Yeah. So for hundreds, I am more of a runner or a jogger than a walker. So unless it's a mountain, I will run pretty much probably mostly the whole thing, unless I'm like fidgeting with something that I can't open, or I'm walking out of the aid station. So, because I just feel better physically. Like, I can be at the same heart rate, I could be at the same pace as somebody walking, but the movement pattern of jogging feels better for me. But in 100, usually my strategy is all about effort. You could say heart rate, same thing, but for me, I just know how I feel in my body. So at least the first 50 miles, my goal is when I hit 50, I feel fresh as a daisy. Like, I don't feel like I have any fatigue hardly in my legs. I feel like game on. And that's where then it's fun, because I tend to be a second half runner. And that's usually when people start falling apart. So then I'd say for the next like 30 miles to like mile 80, I am like in third gear, so I'm probably keeping kind of the same pace. It's just working a little bit harder, but I got a lot of gears left. Like, I am not breathing hard. I can still talk. I'm still very much in control and comfortable. And I try to, and then I get encouraged if I'm picking people off. And then it's like the last 20 miles is where I feel like the race begins. And then that's when I kind of want to know for getting excited where I am in the race. Like, because if I'm near anybody or there are people ahead, I don't want to know before then, usually, because it's really about my own race. And so either that's fun, that gets me excited, but then it's what time do I think I can hit? Because once I've hit the 20-mile window, based on how I feel, I'm pretty good at calculating where I'm going to be at or what I want to try to beat. And then it's game fucking on, and excuse me. But, and so then it's still like, stay, like, where's the line? Because you got 20 miles, which is long, but not that long. And if I'm feeling good, then it's like, how close can I ride that edge until the finish line? And and sometimes I blow it, and that's where it's really fun. And so it's kind of that, it's really holding back, because I know I have the endurance to harness some serious kick butt if I do that well at the end. So
awesome. How did you get interested in doing the 10-day. I found that we were joking about it because I went from a 24-hour to a 6-day, and you
Right.
went from a 100-miler to a 10-day. I'm like, oh, we got a little in common. We're both crazy.
Yeah.
How did
It
that
was
happen?
just because, yeah, it was, I dabbled in like a 48. And I think I wanted a different experience, and I loved across the years, and they were offering a 10-day this one time. And it was like, I just want to see what it's like. So it was really curiosity. And it's funny because it was so overwhelming, and it was good. I went into it saying, I'm not going to race this. No matter how I'm doing, I am not going to race this because I have a hard time not being on the clock, even if I'm not having a great race. Of don't waste time, don't waste time. And I miss out on everything besides get to the finish line, get to the finish line, get to the finish line. Like, I'm really good at getting through aid stations super fast. Like, I'm good at not wasting time. And I was like, I don't want that for this. This is like, I want to take it all in. Like, we're staying in an RV. Like, I want to embrace the experience. And so that was good because I had a different mindset, but it made me really experience it of like, oh, wow. And so it's funny when I went into the 6-day in New Jersey, because that was the next time I did something that long, I was really nervous because I struggled in that 10-day of just like, this is so long, this is so long, this is so long, and not handling that all that well, and just feeling like it was just hard. Like, I got through it, it was great, but it was really hard. And the 6-day, like, I've learned so much in that much time, and I've run so much more. Like, my weekly volume is way higher than it used to be. And so, and just my mindset and experience and all that the 6-day was like so different. And in a positive way, it was like, this is no big deal. Like, this is who I am. It's like, day 1, here's my goal. Day 2, here's my goal. And it's like, it was night and day, which was really good in a sense, because it made me really excited to continue the longer stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's crazy, like, to think how long like a 6-day race is or a 10-day race is, because it's funny, the like the 6 days at the Dome was just a few weeks ago, and Jason was out there. We had a few people that were out there, and I was just thinking, like, each day I'm watching I'm checking on them, and I'm like, by the end of the week, I'm like thinking back, like, I've done so much in the last 6 days, and they've just been like running. It really puts it in, like, now that I'm on the other side looking in, it's like such a long time. It's so crazy.
I totally thought about that too. And it was fun to follow. It was so fun to follow that. Yeah,
it's super cool.
Yeah.
You have any plans
so
on
I'm
doing?
about to, what I was saying when we were emailing or whatever, messaging. So, someday I want to do Sri Chamoy. I really do.
The 3100?
Yeah, the 3100. And because part of that, it's totally, my wheelhouse is back-to-back days. I love back-to-back days. And like, 6 days are great, but it's 24 hours a day. Yeah. And as you know, and we could talk about, like, I'm not a big sleeper, but I think in order to accomplish something like that, remotely like that, I'm trying to find somebody to put on a 1,000-mile race to kind of as a stepping stone, which would be super cool. Is to learn how to better shut it down at night. Start up, shut it down. Start up, shut it down, to really be able to do, 52 days or whatever. Sure. And so I'm going to start playing with, I've done it once before. Last summer, I did a 10-day where I did 500 miles at home in 10 days. And that month I did 900 miles in 30 days, which is the biggest I've ever done. Yeah. But so the next 9 days, starting on Monday, I'm just going to do a 9-hour fixed window. My goal is to average 40 miles a day, because, Sri Chamoy is 18 hours a day. And so if I could average beginning like 70, 75 miles a day, half of that plus a little extra would be 40 miles in 9 hours for just a 9-day block, just to start building towards that, emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
Everything. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. I keep telling my clients, I'm like, I'm going on vacation.
My own vacation. Yeah.
Yeah. My own vacation here.
So you start that on Monday?
Yeah.
Awesome. So what other races you have before the year's up? What else is on the calendar?
So I have a 32-hour, it's local. It's called Hamster. It's up in Bellingham here in Washington, in mid-August. Cascade Crest is our local mountain 100. And I'm on the fence of whether I'm an entrant, that's the end of August, but I might just volunteer for the weekend. So I help out with the aid station supply chain. So I do all that before the race, but they might need me this year during the race. So that's up in the air. And then I have a 24-hour down in Sacramento in September. I'm going back to New Jersey in October for the 48-hour.
Yeah, I heard.
And then I have 100 in later in October. November, I have 100, and then I'm doing 72 at across the years.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Is your goal, I know we had mentioned or talked about it a little bit, your goal is still to get the 100
Yes.
milers?
Yes.
So I see
yes.
that little picture on your website. It looks like it's maybe your office with all your belt buckles along the wall.
Yes, I have so mainly I have some of like the things I've won, but yeah, so I have belt buckles over there. I have some over here. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah.
So I have 2 lists. I have my 100-mile list for me, which I'll reach 100 because I've done, I think it's like 4 that were not in races, that were routes that me and my friends created or I created for myself. But for what's his name's list, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the 100 hundreds list, there's a website. They have to be in races. So I have that list too. So that one's a little bit behind.
Oh, cool.
It's stupid, but it's fun.
No, it's definitely, yeah, it's awesome. Well, tell me about, I was reading on your website, tell me about Everesting. So there's like all kinds of like now official races that are doing that, but you did this back, said that you were the first woman to do it.
Yes, I was the first woman to do it. I think like the first American to do it on foot, because a lot of people do it on their bikes, but more people during COVID started doing it on foot. So yeah, so it only matters going up. They don't care about the down, but like
I was going to tell you, you're crazy because like all the races, like if I don't know if you know, like Colin O'Brady and Jesse Itzler, they have like they have 3 of those type of races around the country, but all of them will walk to the top and ski lift down. But you're just a soldier. You just. I'm like, wait a
minute, because I was training for Cruel Jewel, which is a 100-miler with like 30-something thousand feet of climbing.
Yeah.
And so my coach at the time, because back then I used to work with a running coach, he had said, I've always wanted to do Everesting. And I was like, oh my God. And so it's funny, he ended up backing out and I did it. But because like whatever, it didn't work out for him, but it was funny that I ended up doing it. So you have to do the same route. So you have to pick a trail and you need to stay on that trail the whole time. You do the elevation of Mount Everest, which is 29,000 feet something. I don't remember exactly. You can, I think, stop, but you can't sleep. I forget all the exact rules, but basically it's like one effort, needs to be boring, going up and down. And so I did it on a really technical, rough trail, which is not the most like time efficient, but it was really good for training. And yes, I did it on this trail locally called Chirico, and you climb 1,700 feet in 1.7 miles.
Nice.
So it was intense for sure. And I went a little bit over because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't,
short. Yeah.
Yes.
And you normally hold an event there every year, then you do it like 10 times, right?
Yeah.
So you were already aware of it before you were aware of it. Like you were already doing it.
Yeah. So, because the Chirico 10 peak goes up to 10 repeats because that's like 30. It's 33.4 miles round trip because it's 1.7 up. So if you do 10 repeats, it's 34 miles. So we call it the Chirico 10 peak. People will come out and just do 1, 2, 5. Very few people do 10 because that's a 55K with 17,000 feet of climbing. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the Everest team was 16, I think it was. It was either 16 or 18. So that was a bit of a jump.
Oh yeah.
But I learned so much. Like I went out a little bit too hard, surprise, and got really tired. But I was surprised I got more tired on the up. Like my legs I was such a good downhill runner. I'm not a great mountain runner anymore, which is fine because I'm just not trained for it. But when I am, I'm an awesome downhill runner. And so the downhill was fine the whole time, surprisingly.
Wow.
And so I've always been, and this is me Everybody has their opinions, so you can roll your eyes at me out there. I am not a fan of poles with running. It's just
No?
running to me is not using poles.
Yeah.
Even if it's moderate, don't use poles, like deal with it. But so it was hard for me for this. Everybody's like, you got to use poles, you got to use poles. So the last like 2 or 3 repeats, I used poles, and I was like, wow, these really help. So then when I went and ran Cruel Jewel, because it was like 3 weeks later, I started out slower and I used the poles the whole race and I killed it. I came in like top 20. I think I was like third. Well, I was fourth woman. And this is, interesting. Different race directors take it different ways. But the woman that came in third was, I'm going to use the wrong word, but a man that wanted to be a woman.
Yes.
And so, and I don't know where she was in the process of that transition, but, that's interesting. So being born with the hormones of a woman, and I don't know where he was at with that. So I either kind of, to me, came in third or fourth, but either way, it was great.
Yeah. That's a whole nother debate right now as far as sports with, that's a big issue.
Yeah. But most importantly, like I was really proud of the time that I had, how well I worked through it. I was solid the whole race, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen those guys have been doing the Everesting, like they have the events here somewhere in the U.S. But I went to, my wife's from Colombia, Bogota, Colombia, and they have a mountain there. It's called Maserati Mountain. It's like a church at the top of this mountain, and it's a similar concept. It's like a mile of like 1.2 miles up with like 13 or 1400 feet of elevation, and it's all stairs. So it's not even a trail; it's just stairs. And I was thinking, I went there this past Christmas, and I was walking up, and I'm like, this would be so cool to have have an event. And then I was walking down and I'm like, everybody would die. Like, because the stairs are like so steep. I'm like, you would have to take the trolley down because because
especially stairs.
Oh, it was like my knee was hurting at that point because just stepping down and down and down. It was cool. I love the concept though, because I think you were mentioning it's something different than like a race, right? It's like something it's like to switch it up. It's not just like go 100 miles. It's like, oh, let's have fun with it. Let's try something new.
Yeah, and that's what I think has been fun, is to continue to try and find ways to keep it interesting. And I just really like volume. So mine's often around volume. So it's been silly things of like doing 200s back-to-back weekends. Why not do that? Or then trying like 3 weekends in a row. Or I think I told you that I did a 100-miler and the 55K right afterwards. Like that was super hard. And it's like, to some people it might sound really dumb and pointless, and yes, but to me that's like what life is about. It's like,
of course,
where it reinforces that what matters is what I think of what I do. Without like, especially if I keep it quiet, which I rarely do because I just don't know how to do that. But it's like having kind of almost those secret private goals, and not because you're afraid to tell other people, that's a whole different ball of wax, but more of like reminding that it's really about you and your experience and how you feel about yourself. Yeah,
that's most important.
Yeah. We all love validation from others, but remembering that you can remind yourself that you're a badass. And that's another thing I really believe in. And my friend Andy is really big on this, is like, it expires. Your badassness or what you've done, it expires. You got to keep doing it. And I agree. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can get caught up in other people's opinions and really bring yourself down by telling, especially like with what we do with ultra running, it's such a niche. Like I tell people all the time, like, oh, I'm going to go run for 6 days or 100 miles, even 50K. They're just like, they don't get it, right? They don't get the concept. So then they question everything. Why do you wake up so early to run? Why do you eat the way you do? And it's like, you can get really caught up in that shit. And that's like, so like you said, it's best for what you think and what you feel is for sure.
Yeah.
The most important. Yeah. Have you ever thought about doing the last man standing races where it's like 4.13 miles every hour until you can't do it anymore? Have you done one?
Definitely. And I would want to do that in person.
Oh yeah, not a virtual, no.
Not a virtual. Yeah, I do think I would like to try that at some point. And I think I could do pretty well because I'm not one who needs to sleep.
Yep.
I'm pretty steady Eddie. I'm not like super fast or anything. I just kind of plug along. And my body tends to hold up pretty well. My stomach is good. Like I'm good usually with food. Like I don't struggle very often.
Yeah. And do you bring like whole foods out when you go on these long distance races? Like, do you have like rice and potatoes, or are you good with just like no?
Yeah. I am a cookie monster.
Are you?
I eat a lot of, the brand that I really like, because if I can't do too much sweet stuff, like I love the taste of it because I don't have much sugar in my regular life just because it doesn't make me feel good, but then it doesn't make me feel good. Like if I have too many like Oreos or something like that, like 20 miles later, I'm like, my belly hurts. Like my energy's off. But I found there's this brand called Belvita with a B, not a V, not Velveeta cheese, but Belvita. They have kind of like cracker bars, and then they have these sandwich cookies, which they're kind of like an Oreo, but healthier, and they're just not very sweet, but I love them.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of those. I am a Nutter Butter girl.
Oh, I get those Nutter Butters, yeah.
And I love peanut butter sandwiches or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I like deli cheese, deli turkey and cheese wraps, that kind of stuff. I can't do much fruit. I don't handle the fructose well.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I go out on a run on my own, I usually just pack some sandwiches and some cookies.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Peanut butter and jelly is like so safe and easy. That's one of my go-tos too.
Yeah. So, and that's usually even what I usually take to races. I tend to eat more of my own food than race food.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, in heat, like all I ate at this last 100, where it was like 100 and whatever, was chips. Like I lived on chips.
Oh no.
I never eat. I just was like, I need salt.
I'll have to remember that because it's good. My 100-miler in a couple of weeks is supposed to be so humid and hot. Like it's gonna be.
Where is it? What is it?
It's in Vero Beach. So it's called the Octopus 100. So it's got like a home base, and then it has 8 legs that go out. So like leg one's like 26 miles, leg two's like 18, and you come back to the same home base. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. It's just like an hour and a half north of me. Yeah, it sounds kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got my crew set up.
Icarus is not happening this year.
Such a bummer. A bummer. Yeah. So I think I'm going to they have a race in December. It's called Across Florida. It's a 200-miler. So I think I might hop on that. So I'm going to, I got to make sure I can get a crew because it's going to be like at least 3 or 4 days. And so I just want to make sure I can handle that. But that might be my next option because I'm still trying to do some races to raise money for the campaign and doing all that stuff. Yeah. So it was a bummer that Icarus got canceled because I was looking forward to, because I've done 2 6 days now and I got my ass whooped both times. So I'm ready to get a little redemption, I'm like ready to master this thing because I got my butt kicked both times.
Yeah. Do you think you'll go back to New Jersey?
I like the 6 day. The other Jessica, that our friend, she told me you guys were going to do the 48 hour. And I said, I bet it's going to be so cold at that time of the year. So I don't think I'm going to come back for that one, but for next year for the 3 days at the fair, I definitely liked the event. It was ran very well. The course was cool. Yeah. I just got to be a little more prepared for the cold this time. I'm going to do an RV like you had. Yeah. Because those nights are so cold.
I'm going to try cold training like you would heat train, and I'll report back because I'm going to try it this fall because I was like, I do terrible in the cold.
I have
asthma and I've just never run strong in cold weather. And so I was like, can you cold train like you heat train? So I've been reading a bit more on it, and you can, what I mean? Beyond just like, people do cold showers for good health and recovery. So cold showers, underdressing, and you start to get more where you're cold adapted. So I'm going to play with that this fall for New Jersey and just for winter races, because overnight I just don't do well when it's really cold. So I'll report back.
Yeah, I bet it's freezing up there in the winter because you're in the mountains. I bet it gets cold.
It gets chilly.
Well, do you have any other hobbies, any other passions that you do besides running? Do you have any other interests?
Just my dogs.
The doggies, I see them on Facebook. Yeah. Your little buds.
Yeah. They really are. They're fun. It's I've just found as I've gotten older, I like a really simple life. So I work a bit. I don't work too much, which is really nice. Like I feel like I have a good stress non-stress relationship, where I stress myself running more than anything else, but my life isn't very stressful, so it allows for that. And I love to do crossword type games.
Interesting.
So like, I'm such a routine woman, but like, I just really, to keep me balanced and centered, like I have a morning routine when I get up of journaling and reading and just kind of getting centered for the day. I do my daily routine. And then between like the day and cooking dinner, I take a little break where I lay on the couch with the dogs and I do this. It's a spelling bee game on the New York crosswords that I love. I do it every day and I like to get to amazing level when I can. And I have a little snack and I take an hour and totally unplug. Like I try not to think about work, whether I'm a good or a bad person, anything. It's just like, don't think, just play this game, pet the dogs. They usually fall asleep. And then it's like I transition into wife mode. So I cook dinner, which I love to do. And then my husband and I have dinner. We do the crossword together because we're big dorks, but I love it. And then chill out the rest of the night, and I just love that. That is my passion. It's like.
That's good. That's when you find something, stick with it, like routine, like it works well. But you mentioned morning routine, and my other podcast that we've done is called The Carousel Life. We talk a lot about like morning routines and how important it is. And especially since, I mean, you've been sober so long, it probably doesn't even feel like you used to do that. But I feel like that was really important when I got sober. I have about 11 years now, but just having that like routine of starting your day on the positive side, right? Like not waking up in fight or flight stress mode.
Totally.
What's more in detail, like your morning routine? Do you have like something that helps you pave the path for having a good day when you wake up?
I like to read. I've changed it up sometimes over the years, but I usually read 2 daily reflections type books. So one is the Daily Reflections, which is a 12-step book, which I like just to be refreshed and reminded of like you're sober and appreciate that and whatnot. And then I like the Daily Stoic, which is the guy who wrote The Obstacle is the Way. And it's very similar. It's all about mindset. It's all about like focusing on what you're doing and how you're behaving in the world and all of that kind of stuff. Because I just have found like one of my deep-seated things that I have issue with, which who knows if it was nature, nurture, whatever, is just that I'm a bad person, that I'm not good enough, that kind of stuff. And so I find a lot of value in doing things that make me feel proud of myself and make me feel good about myself. Like I've learned that that's what gives me peace of mind. And so I like reading those 2 because they're both very much on like, take care of yourself. Stop thinking about like you take another, thinking about what they're doing wrong or whatever, but like, what are you doing in your life? And then I journal. I freestyle journal, but then I also always kind of write out my day because I can get kind of chaotic otherwise. And it just is really calming and grounding each morning to kind of think about what do I have ahead and like, how am I going to fit it in? It just kind of sets me up. And then I do this off and on where I finish with like, who do I want to be today? Or how do I want to show up today? Because I like having like a theme or a mantra. And it's like, maybe I have a lot of clients, so I'm like, today I really want to be a good listener. I mean, they're all characteristics that I always want to have, but it's whatever feels really pertinent to that day of like, say I've been grumpy, I'm like, be extra nice to Mike today. That is my focus is like, or if I've been shining him on or something, this is my husband, like look him in the eye when he talks to you today. Like It's such a little thing, but it's such a big difference, And so, so those are the kind of things that I usually do while I drink my coffee, and then I go on with my day.
Yeah, it's super important. It reminds me of like when I get home each day, when I pull up to the house, it's kind of like I got to reset because if not, I don't pay attention to my kids the right way. I don't talk, I'm on my phone. So it's like the same thing. It's like, all right, I got to be a good dad. I got to be in the moment. I got to be here, wipe that shit out and like just be in the moment, right?
Yeah. And it's a constant practice because in my mind, sometimes I'm like, I just want to think about me or whatever. I need to do this or I'm tired or whatever. And I always feel horrible when I do that. And if I just remind myself, I'm like, you will be glad you did. And I always am because it's like, these are the people I love and or the dogs, like even just giving the dogs attention, you know, it's like, yeah. But these are things that it's like anything, I have to practice it. It's not like you ever stop doing it, you know, it's like.
No, you can't ever perfect it. It's just a daily routine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on, because there's so many people in like the ultra world, even just athletic world, that used to be not sober, used to be addicts, drug users, alcoholics, and they transitioned to triathlons, ultra running. How do you think those two like tie together, right? Do you think it's like the dopamine hit that we're getting that we love? Do you think it's the challenges of like getting through the races? What is it for you that you think that, do they correlate for you? Like, does that
I do. I think it's both of those. And I think it's the more is better mentality, just that like more. So I think that those, and just that, I think it's very rewarding to go through something that's hard. And I think we can all experience that. But I think when people are trying to stay sober, overcome something that was really negative in their life, it can be a very rewarding experience for yourself because you're the one doing it. Even if you have help, you're the one doing it and getting through it with it. You usually connect with people, all of those positive things that is going to keep you further away from doing the self-destructive thing. Now, on the flip side, it can turn into a really negative experience for people if they start DNFing races or really over-judging their performance. It can also, I think, be a really downward spiral sometimes.
That's true. Or just completely be addicted to the sport and ignore the family and the work.
And have it become destructive too.
Yeah.
I think part of it for me is I grew up in a really, in my memory, tough childhood on both sides. My mom and my dad, they were divorced. And I was a really unhappy kid. And it was really mean. It was, I don't have a happy memory of my childhood, but I fucking suffered through it and I made it. And I was really good at like, I'm fine. And so I feel like that really works for me. And in dealing with these long stuff, especially if I'm hurting or something's going wrong, I'm really good at kind of dissociating from what I'm experiencing, and just being like, I'm fine. Not going to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to be in my regular life.
Sure.
But I have that in me, and it's a way that I feel like it can be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like it translates a lot for me just to the fact of like the problem solving and like just trying and figuring out what works. And I think that carries over for me into just like daily routine and daily life, whether it's, you're trying something on race day or preparing for the race, nutrition wise or crew wise or whatever. But it's almost like it, like you're saying, like it gives you almost a checklist, like, I did this, I did that. Yes. Like, it's like, you feel proud. Okay, that's good. This is good. You figured out this problem. And it's like, it just translates over to be able to, especially early in sobriety, right? Like you're so lost. Like I always tell people, like quitting doing the drugs wasn't the hardest part. It was being sober and being so lost with life, right? Like, okay, I'm sober. Now what? Like I gotta live life. It's so boring. Like there's not, you know what I mean? Like you had to like,
there's no drama.
No, there's nothing. It's like so bleak. So you had to like, so that kind of, it helped me being able to like figure out what works, right? Like, so you go to meetings or do you get a sponsor or do you start doing these things? And it helped me just get more confidence and be able to try new things, right? Even if it's outside the border of like what normal people do in recovery. It's just like, well, what works for you, right? Like how many meetings, or do you need to talk with people? Do you need to do a podcast so you can talk to like whatever it is, right? Like,
And I feel like that continues to be a big benefit of it. Is it's like it's an opportunity to practice life in this setting that then translates to other areas of life. And even the running itself, because I don't love the excuse of like, oh, well, I'm an alcoholic. Sometimes people say like, why did you do that or whatever? And it's like, because I'm an alcoholic. I call bullshit on that. To me, it's like, yes, I have, like, that is ingrained in me. So how can I work with it? And even with the running, it's like I joked on I've said on a few podcasts, I like to be a well-balanced extremist, where it's like, instead of avoiding, because alcohol, of course, and drugs, I'm going to avoid because like, that's off the table. We're not even going to play that game. But everything else in life, it's like, you can't avoid food or ever spending money or exercising. So it's also an avenue of something where I can get kind of crazy with, of like more. And practicing, this is starting to like not be fun anymore, and constructive fun.
Right.
This is becoming so, practicing pulling back at times too. And like, I like having that in my life because it challenges me, and I want to believe that I can continue to be healthy in that realm, even though that's like an innate part of me, is kind of this destructive, like more, forget everything else, And my husband will help me with that sometimes. He doesn't say it often, but sometimes he'll be like, dude, you are like, I miss you, or you're doing too much, or like, do you think that's a good idea? And it's great because he says that like once every couple of years. I mean, it's not like he's nagging at me.
Sure.
And so when he does, I'm like, oh boy, I better listen to him.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. It's the same way for me. It's like, you're gone too many early mornings, you come home too late, you're doing, and sometimes that's what we have a good partner for, is to be able to kind of give us, check us every now and again, make sure we're listening to everything we should be doing.
Totally. Yeah.
Awesome, Jess. Well, I really appreciate it. So, I was going to ask you, the last thing is, I know you used to do CrossFit, and I remember we were talking at the race, you used to be nice and buff, but then you started doing so many races and you like started cutting back a little bit. What's your philosophy on like the ultra running and like staying fit and strong? Because I go back and forth with this all the time, because I'm like traditionally like a thicker dude, always just weight train, heavy weight training, but getting into like even just doing training loads, like it's hard, especially if working all the day in with family and stuff, to be able to run 20 miles, work out for 2 hours. Like, it's like a fine balance. Like, do you feel like there's like, it's almost more of like a maintenance training, maybe for like strength training, rather than like 5 days a week?
Right. So I think when people are younger, you can get away with more. And because I think across the board, like it's best if you're doing some strength training. There's a whole range of it, but something where you're not just running, because usually that's not going to last very long. You know what I mean? Like, but when you're younger, I feel like you don't have to be as thoughtful about even, because like you can handle more volume as a total, as a human being, whether, it's just CrossFit or any other kind of like strength training or HIIT training or whatever. But I think as you get older, your body gets beat up more. And so at least for me, I've become more specific. Like I used to love CrossFit, but I'm not going to go out and do like, 100 million push-ups and pull-ups right now, because that's going to destroy me. And I've limited amount of time that I can spend really to train without it being unproductive. So I'm very particular in what I do for my strength, because right now, all that matters is supporting my running and having a base level of strength. So I don't go to say like classes anymore. And it's not because I didn't have fun with them, but because I really need to be specific in what I do for this body to be able to run. And so it's less, but it's also just really more fine-tuned, I'd say. Yeah. But I think people need to do strength all the time.
Yeah. And it's maybe more specific, as like I focus now more on like the lower end, right? Like the upper end is just maintenance, do some just for the looks, right? Do some chest and buys. But the leg training is definitely a must for as far as like stability and long distance training and stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then volume kind of depends. I mean, volume of both running and of strength work more. I mean, I think you should do cycles with strength work, because I do think you can easily maintain just doing 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and then maybe have kind of an off season where maybe do a bit more strength for a couple months to build up a little bit, and then you're going to maintain and probably lose some over big running volume. So even just changing it up. But then volume of running can vary widely, because I think some people do well when they have a full-time job and they have kids and they have a lot of responsibilities, and maybe they don't sleep well, with less miles overall. And it also depends upon the race. And then I think less people do well with really big miles all the time, because you really need to have a life that supports that, which most people don't.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me to even go like the past 2 weeks, I've done maybe 30 miles each week. And like, that's almost pushing it, right? Because that's like 2 hours a day with you taking, showering and getting there and doing everything. And then it's like, when I bump it up to 50, 60, I mean, it's like, I'm getting 4 hours of sleep, it's like completely pegged, like because I'm on my feet all day with my day job. So it's like, I'm not sitting down. So it's just go. So I think I fall into that category, right? It's like, I can average 30, 35 miles a week and just and still be able to do these long ultras, which I find amusing.
Yeah.
Because I hear so many, I've seen so many people, their training logs, and it's like, which I'm sure you've done a lot, where they're busting out hundreds of miles in a week, and I'm like, holy shit. It's crazy.
Yeah, and usually that a lot of times that ends up being destructive.
Yeah, I can see that too, where you just fall apart.
Yeah, short term, maybe it's useful for a small benefit, but
yeah,
it doesn't usually do well long. Yeah.
Yeah, so this I was going to mention it earlier, I forgot. But so I'm going Monday to give a test run. So I'm trying to figure out different ways to raise money for our campaign. So I was following this guy on Instagram, and it's these. So my other passion is golf, right? I'm a big golfer.
Okay.
So golfing and running, like, how do I do something to merge the two passions, right? So there's speed golf, right? So there's two records. There's a 12-hour and a 24-hour. How many holes you can play while walking or running within a 12 or 24-hour period. So I'm dabbling my toes in the 24-hour option. So I'm going to go Monday. I'm going to do it for like 3 hours just to kind of get the feel. You carry one club with you and you just go. And it's however many
that sounds so fun.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds so cool. So I'm going to go Monday. One of my friends has a course that's closed right now, so it's easy accessible.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give that a whirl, and
I love it.
it's going to be interesting. I'm curious, like, the guy that has a record that did the 24 hours, he did like 102 miles in the 24 hours while playing 420 holes of golf. So like, he was booking it. Like he's a pro athlete, like an old baseball player and triathlete. So he's been doing it a while, but you see these cool different like things out there, and you're like, wow, I like that. Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
I'll keep you posted on that. It should be cool.
Yeah.
Well, Jess, I appreciate you taking the time. I did want to thank you for making the donation to our campaign. You did that like before you even left the hotel from our 6-day race. So I really appreciate that. That's we're continuing on that for the rest of the year. So I really appreciate your contribution for that. And I thank you for hopping on the podcast with me. I really appreciate you hopping on. We'll have to do another one after all these. We're both doing a lot of races, so I want to hear some race recaps from you.
Okay. It's good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Jess, thank you. We'll talk soon.